My neighbor demanded me to marry his son and tried to destroy my life. When I said no, 2 years later, he's in jail, and I'm thriving with my new family. I inherited my my grandfather house. Well, technically, me and mom did. Mom is a college professor and remarried to a technical writer engineer who makes a ridiculous amount of money in a big old mansion of a house in the well-off part of town. So she said Pop's house is mine. I was grateful, and am still. This was about a year ago. I need to sort of set the stage here. Pop was a popular man. He helped everyone. The kids all called him Uncle or Pops, and his peers called him the Sultan of 2nd Street. He donated and loaned and gave money to whoever needed it. So there is a neighbor to my immediate right, who we call Suga Mama or Suga. Everyone knew that she had it bad for Pops. Suga has a son Miles who also has a son James. James is my age, and we get on well. Suga and some of the other older folks would joke about us. Soulmates. We even share a birthday with a strange coincidence, I will admit. But then they keep adding at the same hospital. Well, yeah, because back then, there was only one good one nearby. Lol. Now, to be clear, I am bisexual with a strong preference if my dating history has any sway for non-binary people or women. I met my now girlfriend Dinah, who is also my age, and she is absolutely a dream. I started having her around the house, and Mr. Miles was always around when we needed help. One day, he came around and offered his and James's help getting stuff from the truck into the house. At one point, James pulled me aside knowing she was my girlfriend and warned me not to mention it to his dad, but it was too late. Miles had asked her if we were college buddies, and she replied we were dating. Mr. Miles pulled me aside asking if it was true, and I said yes. Enter the homophobia and what would Pop think. I told him Pop knew I was bi for years. That shut him up for a bit. About a week ago, Mr. Miles came by and said matter of fact, you need to leave that woman. I laughed as my girlfriend and I have been together over a year and are happy. He said Suga is sick and needs to see her boys married. He prefers I marry James but would be okay with Daniel or Paul. I told him I won't be marrying any of his sons. I already had a ring for Dinah and was planning to propose. I said I know he doesn't agree with gay marriage and he doesn't have to. It's my life. And while I love and respect him like a real uncle, he will not tell me who to love. He yelled awful things and I cried a lot. I asked him to please leave. He did but ripped my pride flag from my pole at the door, calling me slurs. I got a new one the next day and it went missing. So my girlfriend bought me a door cam and a new flag. Sure enough, he came that night and ripped that one down too. I texted him the video and said I wouldn't press charges if he stopped. He said go ahead, call the police on another black man, and if he's unalived, it's on me and my sins. It's night and I was cuddled up to my boo after a movie date playing Mass Effect when there's a knock at my door. It's Paul. He asks to speak with me outside, so I tell Dinah to keep playing. Paul explained he was here to ask me out. He had flowers and a stuffed unicorn, and I told him I'm in a relationship. He said he knew I had a girlfriend, but that wasn't real, as a relationship is between a man and woman, and he knows I date men. I said my relationship is both real and none of his business, and to leave. He then said he guessed I liked feminine men since my girlfriend is trans. I laughed and said he was jealous he couldn't pull a hottie like mine, and said I have cameras with audio, so if he can please FCK off and not force us to call the cops, it would be appreciated. For safety, my girlfriend and I stayed at my folks and just got back yesterday. My dad had a chat with Mr. Miles. I expected everything to be okay, and went back to life per usual. I woke up to make breakfast when there's a knock at the door. I opened it with my bat and made eye contact with a cop. He looks down at my bat, then back to my face, turns showing the cop behind him. I place the bat down and say, sorry, I thought you were someone else. Coffee? They asked for me by name and I showed my ID. They asked for my girlfriend as they got a call. She comes out and shows her ID. They asked to speak to us separately. The cop asked if she felt safe with me, which she said she did. He said he needed to investigate a call. He tried to step inside, but I said no. My girlfriend stepped out with him and the female cop took her aside. The male cop asks why anyone might think I'm holding my girlfriend against her will. I was like, what? He says her boyfriend called saying I took her forcefully. I reply, what boyfriend? She's a lesbian. My girlfriend comes back looking mad. The officers arrive within minutes. Mr. Miles storms out shouting accusations at me. He's waving his arms around and pointing at me while talking to the officers. I can hear him saying something about me corrupting his son and holding this poor girl hostage. The male officer holds up his hand to stop Miles from getting closer. Dinah grabs my hand and squeezes it tight. The female officer steps forward and asks Miles to calm down. He keeps going on about how I'm forcing Dinah to stay with me and how she needs to be freed from my sinful influence. The male officer pulls out his notepad and starts asking Miles specific questions. When did he see me force her? Does he have any evidence? Has he witnessed any violence? Miles stumbles over his words. He mentions the cameras I have and demands they check them. I pull out my phone and show the officers the footage of Miles tearing down my pride flags. They watch it twice. The female officer raises an eyebrow at Miles. He tries to change tactics and says Dinah called him crying for help. Dinah speaks up immediately and says she's never called him in her life and doesn't even have his number. She pulls out her phone to show her call history. The officers look through it and confirm no calls to Miles. The male officer asks Miles if he made a false report. Miles starts backing up and says he was just concerned for the girl's safety. He mentions his mother Suga is sick and how Pop would want him to look after me. I tell the officers about Miles demanding I marry one of his sons and show them the text messages where he guilt-tripped me about calling the police. The female officer takes Miles aside and has a stern conversation with him about filing false reports and harassment. I can see him deflating as she talks. She mentions something about charges and he looks panicked. James comes running out of their house and asks what's happening. He sees the police and his face goes pale. He asks his dad what he did. Miles tells him to go back inside, but James refuses. He tells the officers his dad has been obsessing over me marrying into their family ever since Suga got sick. Paul and Daniel come out too. Paul still has the flowers from last night in his hand, wilted now. The officers ask if this is the same Paul from my door cam footage. I confirm it is. They ask to see that footage too. We all stand there while they watch Paul trying to convince me my relationship isn't real. The male officer asks Paul if he understands that what he did could be considered harassment. Paul starts crying and says his dad made him do it. Miles yells at him to shut up. The female officer tells Miles he needs to stop talking, or they'll have to take him in for interfering with an investigation. Daniel speaks up and says their grandmother has been pressuring them all to get married, but that their dad took it too far. He apologizes apologizes to me and Dinah. He says he tried to talk his dad out of this whole plan, but Miles wouldn't listen. The officers finish taking everyone's statements. They tell Miles he's lucky I'm not pressing charges for the false report and the harassment. They warn him that if he comes near my property again or makes any more false reports, he will be arrested. They make him confirm he understands. Miles looks defeated. He mutters an apology that doesn't sound sincere and starts walking back to his house. His sons follow him, but James hangs back. He apologizes again and says he'll try to keep his dad away from us. I tell him it's not his fault and that he's always welcome to visit as a friend. The officers give us their cards and tell us to call immediately if Miles causes any more problems. They suggest we might want to look into a restraining order. After they leave, Dinah and I go back inside. We sit on the couch and she curls into me. She's shaking a little. I hold her tight and tell her it's going to be okay. She says she knows, but that was scary. Having the cops show up like that made her think something terrible was going to happen. I make us both some tea and we sit in silence for a while. Then Dinah asks if I think it's really over. I tell her I hope so, but we should probably be careful for a while. She agrees and suggests we install more cameras around the property. We spend the rest of the morning doing exactly that. We put cameras covering every angle of the house. While we're working, some of the other neighbors come by to check on us. They saw the police cars and were worried. I explain what happened and they all shake their heads at Miles. Mrs. Cole from across the street says she's been worried about Miles ever since Suga got sick. She says he's been acting more and more desperate about getting his boys married off. Mr. Benj from 2 houses down mentions that Miles has been asking around about other single women in the neighborhood for his sons. That afternoon, my mom calls. She heard from one of her friends in the neighborhood about the police being at my house. I tell her everything that happened. She's furious and wants to come over immediately. I tell her we're okay, but she insists. She and my dad show up an hour later with groceries and dinner. While we're eating, my dad says he's going to have another talk with Miles. I tell him the police already handled it, but he says he wants to make sure Miles understands that our whole family is watching now. My mom agrees and mentions she has lawyer friends if we need them. After my parents leave, Dinah and I try to get back to normal. We play more Mass Effect and order dessert from our favorite place, but I can tell we're both on edge. Every little noise outside makes us jump. That night, I double check all the locks and make sure the cameras are recording. Dinah asks if I want to stay at my parents' place again, but I refuse. This is our home and I won't let Miles drive us out of it. She agrees, and we go to bed. I wake up around 3 a.m. to a notification on my phone. One of the cameras detected motion. My heart pounds as I check the footage. It's just a cat. I show Dinah and we both laugh nervously. Neither of us can get back to sleep easily. The next morning, James texts me. He says his dad spent all night ranting about how the neighborhood has changed and how Pop would be disappointed in me. He warns me to be careful because his dad is talking about taking matters into his own hands. I screenshot the messages just in case. I'm making breakfast when there's a knock at the door. We both freeze. I grab the bat again and look through the people. It's Suga. She's in a wheelchair with James pushing her. I open the door cautiously. Suga looks terrible. She's lost a lot of weight and her eyes are sunken, but she smiles when she sees me. She asks if she can come in to talk. I let them in and help James get her wheelchair over the threshold. She apologizes for Miles. She says she never meant for him to harass us like this. She just mentioned wanting to see her grandsons married before she passes, and Miles ran with it. She tells us she gave him a proper talking to last night. Then she surprises me by saying she's happy I found someone who makes me happy. She says Pop told her years ago that I was bi and that he was proud of me for being myself. She wishes us well and makes James promise to keep his father in line. After they leave, Dinah and I feel a bit better. Maybe having Suga on our side will help calm Miles down. We decide to go about our day normally. Dinah has work to do from home and I have some house repairs to tackle. I'm fixing a loose board on the porch when Paul approaches. I tense up, but he holds his hands up in a peaceful gesture. He apologizes for the other night. He says his dad pressured him into it and he felt terrible afterward. He promises to leave us alone. I accept his apology but tell him he needs to work on himself. The things he said about Dinah were not okay. He nods and says he knows. He's been doing some reading online about trans people and realizes he was wrong. He leaves quickly after that. The rest of the week passes quietly. Miles doesn't come near our property. We see him sometimes glaring from his yard, but he doesn't approach. The other neighbors make a point of being extra friendly to us, showing their support, but the quiet doesn't last. 3 days later, I'm at the grocery store when I run into Daniel. He looks uncomfortable and tries to avoid me, but I call out to him. He reluctantly comes over and tells me his dad has been meeting with some of the older neighbors, trying to turn them against us. He says Miles is telling everyone that I'm disrespecting Pop's memory by refusing to honor Suga's dying wish. When I get home, I notice Mrs. Cole avoiding eye contact when I wave. Mr. Benj hurries inside when he sees me coming. My stomach drops. Miles is poisoning the neighborhood against us. That evening, Dinah and I are watching TV when we hear loud music coming from Miles's house. It goes on for hours. We try to ignore it, but around midnight, I go outside to ask them to turn it down. James answers the door and looks embarrassed. He says his dad is having a party for Paul's birthday. I can see Miles in the background, watching me with a smirk. The music continues until 3 a.m. We barely sleep. The next night, it happens again, and the next. On the 4th night, I call the non-emergency police line to file a noise complaint. The officer who comes out is sympathetic, but says since it's before the noise ordinance cutoff time, there's nothing he can do. Miles watches from his window the whole time. A week later, I come home to find my mailbox knocked over. The post is bent, and mail is scattered on the ground. I check the cameras, but conveniently, that angle has been spray painted over. I clean the lens and fix the mailbox, but 2 days later, it happens again. Dinah starts getting anxious about leaving the house. She works from home anyway, but now she won't even go to the store without me. I can see this is wearing on her. One morning, she breaks down crying and asks if we should just move. I hold her and tell her this is our home. Pop left it to me, and I won't let Miles drive us out. I decide to talk to Mom about everything. She comes over with her lawyer friend, Ms. Rodriguez. We show her all the evidence, the videos, the texts, the documentation of the harassment. Ms. Rodriguez says we have a strong case for a restraining order. She helps us file the paperwork. 2 days later, I'm served with papers. Miles is suing me for defamation. He claims I've been spreading lies about him in the neighborhood and damaging his reputation. The lawsuit is ridiculous, but it means I need to hire a lawyer. Ms. Rodriguez recommends someone, but it's going to cost money I don't really have. While I'm dealing with the legal stuff, things escalate at home. Our garbage cans keep getting knocked over. Someone keeps calling in false complaints to the city. One week it's about overgrown grass. It's not. The next it's about a non-existent broken fence. Each time I have to take time off work to deal with inspectors. James texts me apologizing for his dad's behavior. He says Miles found out about the restraining order paperwork and is furious. He's been drinking more and ranting about how I'm trying to destroy their family. James is worried about what his dad might do next. His worry is justified. A few nights later, I wake up to the smell of smoke. I jump out of bed and run outside to find a small fire in our front yard. Someone has piled up sticks and garbage and set it ablaze. I grab the garden hose and put it out quickly, but my hands are shaking. Dinah calls 911 while I check the cameras. The footage shows a figure in dark clothes and a hood, but I can't make out who it is. The fire department arrives and confirms it was deliberately set. The police take a report, but without clear evidence of who did it, they can't do much. The next day, Paul comes to my door. He looks terrible. Bags under his eyes, clothes wrinkled. He tells me his dad has gone too far and he wants to help. He says Miles was hammered last night and came home smelling like smoke, but he's too scared to tell the police. He gives me his number and says to call if I need a witness for anything. Things get worse before they get better. My car tires are slashed while I'm at work. Dinah's car windows are broken while we're sleeping. Each time the cameras somehow miss the perpetrator or the footage is too dark to make out details. We know it's Miles or someone working with him, but we can't prove it. The restraining order hearing finally comes. Miles shows up with a lawyer and tries to paint me as the aggressor. He claims I've been harassing him and his family, that I'm the one causing problems in the neighborhood. But when Ms. Rodriguez presents our evidence, the videos, the texts, the police reports, the judge sees through his lies. The restraining order is granted. Miles has to stay 100 feet away from us and our property. I think this will finally end things, but Miles finds ways around it. He stands exactly 100 feet from our property line and stares at the house. He follows us to the grocery store, maintaining the legal distance but making sure we see him. It's creepy and unsettling, but technically legal. Daniel comes by one evening when Miles is at church. He's carrying a box and looks nervous. He says he can't take it anymore and wants to help. Inside the box are receipts, photos, and recordings he's secretly made of his dad planning his harassment campaign. There's even a recording of Miles admitting to setting the fire, though he's careful not to say it directly. With this new evidence, we go back to the police. This time, they take it seriously. They open an investigation into the fire and the property damage. Miles must sense the walls closing in because his behavior becomes more erratic. One morning, I find dead flowers on our doorstep with a note that says, "For your funeral." That afternoon, someone calls my work claiming to be me and tries to quit my job. Luckily, my boss recognizes it's not my voice and calls me directly. That evening, pizza delivery drivers keep showing up with orders we didn't place, all paid with cash on delivery, of course. Dinah is at her breaking point. She's not sleeping, barely eating, and jumps at every sound. I'm not much better. We install more security measures, better locks, motion sensor lights, even a security system. But we can't shake the feeling that we're under siege. Then James calls me in a panic. Suga has taken a turn for the worse and is in the hospital. He says his dad is losing it, blaming me for making Suga's condition deteriorate by refusing her dying wish. He warns me to be extra careful. That night, we're woken by the security alarm. Someone is trying to break into the back door. I grab the bat and my phone, calling 911 as I creep toward the sound. Through the window, I can see a figure jimmying the lock. The police arrive quickly, lights flashing, and the figure runs. They give chase but lose them in the darkness. The attempted break-in is the final straw. We pack bags and go to my parents' house again. But even there, we don't feel safe. Miles knows where they live. He's shown he's willing to escalate. How far will he go? The next morning, my dad has had enough. He calls a meeting with some of the older neighbors, the ones who knew Pop best. He reminds them of who Pop was, how he'd never want his memory used to justify harassment and violence. Some of them look ashamed. They admit Miles has been filling their heads with lies. Mrs. Cole apologizes for avoiding us. She says Miles told her I was disrespecting Pop's memory and Suga's wishes, but she realizes now he's the one dishonoring Pop's legacy of love and acceptance. Mr. Benj agrees and says several neighbors are willing to testify about Miles's behavior if needed. We decide to go home, but my parents insist on staying with us for a few days. Having them there helps, but we're all on edge. The police increase patrols in our area, but Miles is smart. He knows how to toe the line without crossing it. Then we get unexpected help. Paul calls and says he needs to meet urgently. We agree to meet at a public place, a coffee shop downtown. He arrives looking terrified and slides a flash drive across the table. On it are videos he's secretly recorded of his dad planning his harassment campaign, including discussions about the fire and the break-in attempt. He also has screenshots of messages where Miles is coordinating with a cousin to do some of the dirty work to avoid violating the restraining order. Paul says he can't stand by anymore. His dad has become someone he doesn't recognize, consumed by hatred and control. He's willing to testify if it means stopping this madness. I thank him and immediately take the evidence to the police. This time, they have enough to act. They arrest Miles for conspiracy to commit arson, attempted breaking and entering, and violating the restraining order through third parties. His cousin is arrested too. The neighborhood watches as Miles is led away in handcuffs, still ranting about sin and Pop's memory. But even with Miles in custody, the damage to our sense of security is done. Dinah has panic attacks when she hears unexpected noises. I constantly check the cameras and double-check the locks. We both have trouble sleeping, waiting for the next attack that might not come. James and Daniel come by to apologize again. They're staying with relatives while their dad is in jail and their grandmother is in the hospital. They say Suga doesn't even know what's been happening. Miles never told her about his campaign of harassment. She still thinks I'm just taking my time deciding about marriage. The legal process drags on. Miles posts bail and has to wear an ankle monitor. He's not allowed within 500 feet of us now, but we still see him around the neighborhood, always just outside the legal distance. His lawyer tries to get the charges dropped, claiming mental distress due to his mother's illness. Our lawyer warns us that Miles might get a plea deal, community service and probation instead of jail time. It's frustrating, but at least there will be consequences. The important thing is establishing a paper trail in case he escalates again. During all of this, I almost forget about the ring I bought for Dinah. It sits in my sock drawer while we deal with crisis after crisis. Our Our relationship is stronger for having weathered this storm together, but it's also strained. We're both exhausted, traumatized, and struggling to remember what normal feels like. One evening, while we're cooking dinner together, Dinah breaks down. She says she loves me but doesn't know if she can keep living like this. The constant fear, the looking over our shoulders, the way our home has become a fortress instead of a sanctuary. I hold her as she cries, feeling my own tears falling. That's when I realize Miles has already won in a way. He's poisoned our peace, turned our dream home into a source of anxiety. Even if he goes to jail, even if he never bothers us again, he's left scars that will take time to heal. But I also realize something else. Pop wouldn't want us to give up. He'd want us to fight for our happiness, to build the life we deserve despite the obstacles. That night, I make a decision. We're going to reclaim our home, our peace, and our future. The next morning, I call a neighborhood meeting. Most people come, curious about what I have to say. I stand up and tell them everything. About Pop's acceptance of who I am, about the harassment we've endured, about how Miles has used their respect for Pop and Suga to manipulate them. I show them some of the evidence, the videos of destruction and hate. Then I talk about Pop's real legacy, love, acceptance, and community support. I remind them of how he helped everyone regardless of their differences. Several older neighbors are crying by the end. They share their own stories of Pop's kindness and agree that he would be appalled by what's happened. Mr. Benj stands up and proposes that the neighborhood come together to support us, to show that Miles doesn't speak for them. Others agree. They organize a schedule to check on us, to help with repairs, to make sure we know we're not alone. It's a turning point. With the neighborhood's support, we start to feel safe again. People wave when they see us, stop to chat, invite us to block parties. The isolation Miles tried to create crumbles. His trial date approaches. Paul and James both agree to testify against their father. Daniel supports them but can't bring himself to testify. We understand, it's their father after all. The prosecutor feels confident with the evidence we have. A week before the trial, Suga passes away. Despite everything, I go to the funeral. Miles is there, of course, on ankle monitor. He glares at me but can't approach. I pay my respects to Suga, remembering the kind woman who just wanted her family happy, not knowing how twisted her son would make that wish. James finds me after the service. He says Suga asked about me in her final days. When he told her I was happy with someone, she smiled and said Pop would be glad. She never knew about the harassment, and James is grateful for that small mercy. The trial is brutal. Miles' lawyer tries every trick to paint him as a grieving son driven to extremes by mental anguish, but the evidence is overwhelming. The videos, the testimonies, the pattern of escalating harassment, it all paints a clear picture. When Paul takes the stand and describes his father's obsession and manipulation, several jury members look shocked. I testify about the impact on our lives, how we've had to change everything about how we live because of one man's hatred. Dinah testifies too, her voice shaking as she describes the fear that's become our constant companion. The jury deliberates for only 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Miles is sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 years of probation after that. He's also ordered to pay restitution for the damage he caused and to undergo mandatory counseling. As they lead him away, Miles looks at me one last time. There's still hatred in his eyes, but also something else, defeat. He's lost everything in his crusade to control my life. His family is fractured, his reputation destroyed, his freedom gone. Outside the courthouse, James and Paul wait for us. They apologize again and say they want to try to be the neighbors Pop would have wanted. It will take time to build trust, but I'm willing to try. Pop believed in second chances, after all. That evening, Dinah and I sit on our porch for the first time in months without fear. The neighborhood feels peaceful again. Kids are playing in the street, someone is barbecuing, life is returning to normal. I take her hand and realize it's time. This isn't how I planned it, but after everything we've been through, I don't want to wait another day. I get down on one knee right there on the porch Pop built with his own hands. Dinah says yes, crying and laughing at the same time. Some neighbors see and start cheering. Mrs. Cole brings over champagne she's been saving. Mr. Benj offers to officiate if we want. It feels like the community Pop loved is finally whole again. As we celebrate with our neighbors, I think about Pop and what he would say. I think he'd be proud. Not just that I stood up for myself and the person I love, but that I did it with the values he taught me. Love over hate, community over isolation, courage over fear. Miles tried to use Pop's memory as a weapon, but in the end, Pop's true legacy won. The love he showed, the acceptance he modeled, the community he built, those things proved stronger than one man's hatred. We still have healing to do. There are still nights when we wake up at strange sounds, still moments when the trauma resurfaces, but we face them together, supported by our community, building the life we choose. The wedding planning starts the next week. Nothing fancy, just something small in the backyard with the people who matter. James offers to help with decorations, and I accept. It feels like a peace offering and a new beginning rolled into one. Paul asks if he can bring his new boyfriend to the wedding. Turns out all that reading about acceptance helped him figure some things out about himself. I tell him of course he can. Daniel surprises us by showing up with a handmade wooden arch. He's been taking woodworking classes and wanted to contribute something meaningful. He says Pop taught him basic carpentry years ago, and this feels like honoring that memory properly. We set it up where Pop's old garden used to be. 2 weeks before the wedding, Miles's lawyer contacts us. He wants to make a deal. Miles will plead guilty to all charges in exchange for 18 months instead of 2 years. Our lawyer advises us to take it. She says it guarantees he'll serve time and have a felony record. We agree, mostly because we just want this chapter closed. The day of the plea hearing, Miles looks smaller somehow. Prison jumpsuits have a way of doing that. He reads a prepared statement about his grief over his mother's illness clouding his judgment. He apologizes to the court, but notably not to us directly. The judge accepts the plea and adds that he hopes Miles uses his time in prison to reflect on the harm he's caused. James drives his dad to the facility where he'll serve his sentence. He texts me afterwards saying Miles cried the whole way there. Not tears of remorse, James clarifies, but tears of self-pity. He kept saying this wasn't how things were supposed to go. James tells him maybe it's exactly how things needed to go. Our wedding day arrives on a perfect spring morning. Mrs. Cole and some of the other neighbors have transformed our backyard into something magical. String lights everywhere, flowers from their own gardens, and Pop's favorite jazz playing softly. Mom walks me down the makeshift aisle since Dad is saving seats for people. Mr. Benj performs the ceremony beautifully. He talks about love being patient and kind, about building a life together brick brick by brick. He mentions Pop once, saying he's surely smiling down at two people choosing love over everything else. Dinah looks radiant in her dress. When we kiss, the whole neighborhood erupts in cheers. The reception is in true neighborhood style. Everyone brings a dish. James makes his grandmother's famous potato salad from her recipe. Paul and his boyfriend dance together, ignoring the few raised eyebrows from older folks. Daniel takes photos with an old film camera, saying digital doesn't capture the warmth right. As the sun sets, we're all sitting around sharing stories about Pop. The real stories, not the sanitized versions. How he helped Mr. Benj's family when they first immigrated and had nothing. How he taught Mrs. Cole to drive after her husband died. How he never asked questions when helping, just showed up with whatever was needed. Mom stands up and shares something I never knew. When I came out to Pop as bi, he immediately went to the library and checked out every book he could find about LGBTQ+ issues. He wanted to understand, to be the best support he could be. He even joined a group for grandparents of queer kids. That's who Pop really was. Someone who led with love and backed it up with action. The party winds down, but nobody wants to leave. We sit under the stars, neighbors who've become family, finally feeling like the community Pop always envisioned. Someone mentions that Miles would hate knowing how happy we all are without him. James says that's the best revenge, living well and living freely. Over the next few months, life settles into a new normal. The security cameras become less of a necessity and more of a habit. We stop jumping at unexpected noises. Dinah goes back to leaving the house alone without anxiety. The physical reminders of Miles's harassment fade. New mailbox, repaired property, fresh paint where smoke damage lingered. James visits regularly now. He's pursuing a degree in social work, inspired by everything that happened to help other families dealing with similar issues. He says his dad's actions opened his eyes to how toxic masculinity and homophobia can destroy families. He wants to be part of the solution. Paul continues his journey of self-discovery. He joins a local LGBTQ+ support group and becomes an unexpected advocate. He even speaks at his church about acceptance and love, though not everyone wants to hear it. He tells me once that he's grateful his dad's hatred forced him to examine his own beliefs. Without that push, he might have lived his whole life in denial. Daniel keeps his distance more than his brothers, but sends occasional texts. He's processing everything in his own way. He tells me once that he's in therapy, trying to understand how he missed all the warning signs about his dad. I remind him that it's not his fault. Sometimes the people we love become strangers gradually, then suddenly. 6 months into Miles's sentence, we get a letter from him. My hands shake as I open it, expecting more vitriol. Instead, it's short and formal. He's writing to inform us that he's enrolled in anger management and counseling programs. He's not asking for forgiveness or making excuses. He just wanted us to know. We don't respond, but I keep the letter. Maybe someday it'll mean something. The first anniversary of our wedding approaches. We decide to have a big barbecue and invite the whole neighborhood again. While planning it, I realize we haven't thought about Miles in weeks. He's become a footnote in our story rather than the main antagonist. That feels like victory. The day of the barbecue, James arrives early to help set up. He mentions his dad is up for early release in a few months with good behavior. My stomach clenches, but James quickly adds that Miles has already made arrangements to live with relatives in another state. He won't be coming back to the neighborhood. The restraining order will convert to a permanent one, and violating it means straight back to prison. As people arrive for the party, I'm struck by how different everything feels from a year ago. The same neighbors who once avoided eye contact now bring homemade gifts and share inside jokes. Kids who used to hurry past our house now ask if they can pet our new rescue dog. The transformation isn't just in them, it's in us too. We're not victims anymore. We're survivors who chose joy. During the party, Dinah pulls me aside. She's been feeling sick lately and took a test. We're going to be parents. I'm overwhelmed with emotion thinking about raising a child in Pop's house, in this neighborhood that's learned to choose love over hate. We decide to wait to tell everyone, wanting to savor this moment just between us. That night, after everyone's gone home, we sit on the porch swing Pop installed decades ago. The same porch where I proposed, where we've rebuilt our sense of safety, where our child will take their first steps. I think about the journey from that terrifying morning with Elise at our door to now. Miles tried to destroy us with his obsession and hatred. He weaponized family obligation, community pressure, and even grief. But he underestimated the power of people choosing to do better. His sons chose courage over compliance. Our neighbors chose truth over comfortable lies. We chose to stay and fight rather than run. 2 months later, we announced the pregnancy at Sunday dinner with my parents. Mom cries and immediately starts planning the nursery. Dad jokes about teaching his grandchild to be better at video games than me. It's normal and beautiful and everything Miles tried to steal from us. James, Paul, and Daniel all offer to help with baby preparations. They want to be the uncles their father never let them be. We accept, knowing that chosen family can be just as powerful as blood, maybe more so, because it's built on respect and love rather than obligation. The baby arrives on a crisp fall morning, a healthy girl we name Poppy, after the man whose legacy of love made our life possible. When we bring her home, the entire neighborhood is waiting. Mrs. Cole has organized a meal train. Mr. Benj has carved a beautiful wooden nameplate for the nursery. Even people we barely knew before Miles's harassment have shown up to celebrate new life on 2nd Street. James is one of the first to hold Poppy. He looks down at her with tears in his eyes and promises to be the kind of man Pop would be proud of. Paul and his boyfriend bring enough diapers to last months. Daniel crafts a mobile with wooden stars that plays Pop's favorite song. As I watch our community embrace our daughter, I realize Miles's defeat is complete. Not because he's in prison or moving away, but because love won. The hatred he tried to spread has been transformed into something beautiful. Where he saw sin, we built family. Where he demanded conformity, we celebrated authenticity. Where he used Pop's memory as a weapon, we honored it with acceptance. Poppy falls asleep in my arms as the neighbors quietly clean up and head home. Dinah leans against me, exhausted but glowing. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, sleepless nights, diaper changes, all the beautiful chaos of parenthood. But tonight, in Pop's house, surrounded by the evidence of community and love, we're exactly where we belong. The last update I get about Miles comes from James. His father has settled in his new city, got a job, and is keeping to himself. He's still in counseling and has even reached out to a LGBTQ+ affirming church to try to understand. It's not forgiveness or reconciliation humiliation, but it's growth. Pop would probably say that's enough. Our story doesn't end with dramatic confrontations or perfect justice. It ends with Tuesday dinners and birthday parties, with neighbors who check in and friends who show up. It ends with Poppy's first steps on the same floors where Pop taught me to dance. It ends with the quiet victory of lives well lived, despite someone's attempt to derail them. Miles wanted to control our story, to force us into roles we never auditioned for. Instead, we wrote our own ending. One where love wins, not through grand gestures or dramatic showdowns, but through the daily choice to build something better. Pop's house is filled with laughter again. The pride flag flies undisturbed, and somewhere, I hope Pop is smiling, knowing his legacy lives on in the most powerful way possible, through love without conditions, acceptance without limits, and a community that learned to choose better. That's the real update. Not that we survived Miles's harassment, but that we thrived despite it. Not that justice was served, but that healing happened. Not that we won, but that we refused to let him make us lose ourselves. The Sultan of 2nd Street would be proud. His house is still a haven, his values still alive, his love still changing lives one neighbor at a time.